The current prices of Bitcoin and altcoins making you cry. Are you sad? Do you think the bear market is over? Well, today is the perfect show for you because we're going to put things in perspective. We have Magic and Money joining us to break down the charts. Is the spill off over? Are we going to see a rebound for the price of Bitcoin and altcoins? You know, some altcoins are actually holding up fairly well. We're going to have that much important conversation. So stay tuned and let's get going.
Hola! It's your boy Big Rob back in the house. Welcome to Sin City Crypto, home of the entertainment-focused cryptocurrency content where we take old, boring, and stale charts that are causing you pain and we repackage that up in a fun and soothing kind of way. So,
you pop a hydrocodone in your mouth, make you feel better.
What?
No,
Yeah.
For pain?
No. I have breaking news out of China. I know you guys are all wondering what is going on in the markets. Well, China, you know, things are getting out of control. You thought the pandemic was bad. Well, take a look. This was from a concert. A robot was attacking the crowd. And so the robots are unleashed. Come on back. Come on back. You think the pandemic was bad? Wait till the robots come after you.
The robot pandemic.
That's right, man. I think if you thought this pullback was bad, I'm telling you, 2020, it's going to pale in comparison to the robot takeover.
Is the robot was trying to give a headbutt?
Yeah, it was.
It was like
Maybe it was just trying to watch the concert with the crowd. You know,
The Karate Kid.
what's wrong with the jacket? Is it a Vitalik jacket?
There's a lot wrong with that video, Rocco. We don't want to get into that. But what we do want to get into is we got Magic joining us, and what a perfect day to bring him on the show. You know, we're not going to waste any time. Magic, welcome back to the show, man. You know, last week, Magic, you talked about 86 to 87K.
and there was some people in the chat dropping elbows on you, man. They were like, "Oh hell no, man! What is Magic talking about? 80 what?
Yeah,
I'm watching another channel." Like, yeah.
So looks like you were right. Before we dig into the chart, and we're going to go to the Bitcoin chart first, Magic, so you get a heads up of what to queue up on your side. But I want to take a look at this. Liquidations have slowed down over the last 1 hour, but on the 24-hour, we're at $1.6 billion. And obviously, you don't need me to show you, but just in case you're wondering, 90% of those were longs. Outflow day ever, I believe. 539 million flowed out of the ETFs, with BlackRock and Fidelity accounting for like 70% of that. BlackRock, 158 million in outflows. Fidelity, $250 million. So $247 million of outflows from Fidelity. Red across the board. Wall Street capitulated. We're not going to get into, I kind of shared yesterday on my show why I thought the prices were going down. But Magic, Bitcoin, couple questions. One, why do you think the move to the downside happened? You have some people pointing to manipulation. And once you're done with the Bitcoin chart, there's a couple tweets I want to share, but I'm not going to share that now. Why do you think the price went down? And do you think the capitulation or the sell-off is over and we get a rebound, or do you think there's still more downside to go?
I think it's by and large close to a bottom here in terms of like the short and medium term. By no means does that mean full on reversal back to bull market, though. It's just a very important area to be looking at. Why do I think the market's selling off? I mean, I don't really know. If you wanted my 2 cents on why I think the market is dipping, I had SPX coming into some really key levels as well. I've had this box I've been sharing on Twitter that is just absolutely crushing the SPX now. I think that Trump is a bit of a wild card, and a lot of people are expecting him to pump markets. But when you get in the past, we've always had, very expected news from our government. We knew what they were going to do. There were really no sweeping policy changes. There wasn't anything that was a big like wrench. And I do think that now you're seeing what happens when markets don't know what's going to be, up for grabs in terms of laws on trade or policies. So as that moves, I think that you'll see one, more volatility, but two, people will become risk off, and that now includes things like Bitcoin. But regardless, that's all conjecture and opinion, so you can't really trade it. So we'll show why I was expecting downside based on other things. You guys can probably hear my air fryer going off. I have a steak in there. If you guys don't cook steak in the air fryer,
Steak in the air fryer?
It is 2024 or
Bro, aren't
2025,
you
and
in
I'm telling you
Kansas?
right now.
Don't you guys like
Yeah,
grill
yeah.
and stuff?
We do, but I'm multitasking right
Fair
now.
enough.
So and I
Oh,
wanna
okay,
eat.
got it. Because you're doing
But
charts and crypto. Not
but,
only is he cooking the steak, my boy over here cooking the charts too. But go ahead, man.
very good. Yeah. So the setup for us was a quarterly setup based off of range expansions, and it's a very unique setup for Bitcoin because you've only seen a handful of them throughout its history. It's based on quarterly candles and how large they are, essentially, where the average candle is 67 to 72% if we're including both positive and negative candles. If we only include positive, it's actually like 86 to 114% if you're giving it like a mean average range. Anytime that you've seen 2 quarters in a row where the expansion is half of the normal expected value, which is what we just saw before we got this move, you see the exact same setup over and over. It would actually be, I believe, in my BLX chart here. I believe I've got it all in this one, post-expansion PA. Yeah, and we've covered this before, but I always tell people, like, it sucks that I go back over things so much, but it's really just to reiterate that once you form a plan, it can be extremely hard in markets to stick to it. And so it's very important to document these things, whether it's on TradingView or for yourself in a journal. But this was what we were expecting. We got 83% to the upside, which was the last quarter's expansion before the new year. In every single instance, you have seen a pump and then a dump after that expansion. You saw a pump here. It was only 8.91% before dumping 12.98. And you can go back and you can find these over and over again. I believe the other ones are all the way back here, where you see the exact same type of play out, but it has to happen off of that, price expansion expectation. So we were expecting it to pump, and then you're watching the yearly open or the quarterly open in this case, because it's a quarterly setup. It just happens to be the yearly open as well. And once lost, you're looking for minimum value targets, which puts us, back here on a live chart. I did extend the box up a little bit. You'll notice that I have the values here for both up and downside. So we were expecting somewhere between 7.8% to 15.86 to the upside first, which did complete a really, really nice setup, which was a harmonic, which Dave messaged me over the weekend, said he was going to be looking into harmonics, which I love. That's awesome.
I love it's so intriguing to me, the harmonic pattern trading. So I've been watching a lot of like Scott Carney videos, and there's some it's definitely nuance to it. There's a lot of numbers, as far as like the distance between the X and the A leg or the B and the C leg. And so it's just something, I haven't really dug into, but I'm currently doing it. I'm looking forward to continue. So
it took me about a year when I started getting into them in 2019 and 2020 to really wrap my head around it, just to give you a heads up. But it's worth it. It's a very good system. I prefer them over traditional patterns, to be quite upfront with you.
Well,
but this is a sharp pattern.
What I love, one thing I'll say, Magic, and I'll let you get back to it. One thing I do like about harmonic, charting and patterns is you're essentially finding the targets before they're hit. And so you're able to enter into positions long or short. So.
Yeah, you're projecting for specific types of expansion based on prior expansions or not. So it's very good. In this case, we had a shark setup, so it's a short is what we were looking for here. And I always try to show the receipts on my Twitter that hey, these are dated like weeks in advance sometimes where we're doing this, and you're not always going to be right. But in this case, we knew we were expecting a pump. We got it. It actually exceeded the value that we were expecting, because we were expecting this to cap out somewhere near the prior high. And we knew that if we took the high and came back below, that we could be looking for that move back to the quarter one and yearly open, and then eventually down to this zone here, which is the average of price from the prior quarter at 86,881. Those hit at about a 72 to 75% hit rate. Just depends on where you start and stop your data collection for percentage sake, but a little over 70% regardless. So you knew this was a high likelihood target. And then we knew that every single time we've seen that expansion, we're expecting it to probably dump a little further even into like this 85,000 down to 76,000 zone, which is extremely large. So, the bias really had anything to do with fundamentals. I'm not watching exchange hacks. I don't care about any of that. I was expecting this type of price action, and whatever the catalyst for that to occur is the catalyst. And it's been that way, forever in time, because I can't predict if someone's going to hack an exchange or, whatnot. I don't have that capability. I only have the capability of looking at probabilities and saying this was most probable based on what I have documented and the data sets that I've collected. So just like I was expecting the expansion up, once it happened, what happens after that? And we saw a pattern of what's happening. So that quarterly setup is playing out. Again, it could expand to the downside as low as $76,000 according to this. That doesn't mean it will stop there. It could go lower. We don't know. It could stop here, but we're pretty close. Like, we know that we're coming into a zone. We should start expecting reversal, because historically speaking, every time this setup is played out, we have seen a reversal within these values. So now we need to see if there's anything else that lines up with that. And if we go to that shark pattern once again, it has its own set of targets, which is usually the 50% marks your first one, which I don't have up. Then you want the 886. There's a guy in the group who uses the 818, kind of like a gold pocket. He uses it for the 886 pocket because sometimes you don't get them. But 818 to 886, and then the 113% retrace is next. Anything beyond that, and you expect the 1618. So you are coming into that key support zone. And just so that people know, I've been talking about this on the show even, that this is actually a very, tradable way to trade the market. This is from the 32 and 24K zone. We had the exact same pattern play out. This one perfect in time, actually a really nice 1-to-1. So the symmetry of this one was pretty absurd. Move this over to the high, and you can see that the 1-to-1 is exact, which sometimes gives you a little extra confidence that, okay, this is good. Markets like symmetry. My first target, 50%, 886, really nice area. Where'd my wick go to? 113%. Where was my quarterly pivot at that time? Was all the way up here. However, we had a prior one here also kind of finding support at that old low. So, could it be the exact same setup? Maybe. My theory is that you have to have a way to determine if this move is now, played out and I should be looking for reversal. And so for me, when I look at it as I've got multiple, confluences now showing me that this is probably the area of interest. You can do things as simple as this even, guys. You can go to like a quarterly or a monthly chart, and you can just go ahead and plot the fibs and just do something like this. I call it the order block is what it's underneath on mine. And the reason I have it there is because I like to divide things up into quarters and halves, because it just makes it easier to compartmentalize. And when you do so, you can come in and say, okay, we lost 96. My next zone realistically isn't until about 83, which we're approaching. So it all kind of lines up in that manner. Just like last month, the previous month EQ is what's been holding you back, outside of a few other things, but when you look at this like on a daily chart, you can see that I was saying we need that 100K zone, just dissecting the prior month. You can see this was the EQ of last month. Very good resistance. There was a lot of other stuff there. So I'm looking at this zone here. It's called the must hold PP zone. It's not meant to be funny. It kind of is. We do like to joke around, but what it is it's a pivot zone. It is comprised of the pivots, and these pivots are the 6-month and the yearly pivot. Is it in this one, or I think it's in this BLX folder? Sorry for the jumping around on you guys, but yeah, this is the right one. So anytime you've gone post halving is what you want to be paying attention to. You get, pivots like you would any other time. You want to hold them as support, because now you're holding your most crucial timeframes in terms of average as support. And it's a horizontal level. You can see that we had the halving here, and we were already on top of the pivot zone, the 6-month and the yearly. So there was no need for us to come back to it. We were already holding it as support before moving on. Only when you go below these averages is the bull market over post halving. And you can see it happened here and it's happened here. So, where we are in terms of prices, we're above it, which is good. So my line in the sand of, hey, could this still be a bullish reversal is, 80,000 to 83,000, basically 80,107 to 83,574. If it wicks below there, I probably don't care as much. Like a wick isn't going to scare me off, but it's going to be like a closure, because you can see here in 2018, when we topped at 20K, you came down and tried to hold it. You almost did, but then eventually gave it up and then just turned it into resistance, and it became a great place to find a hedge. Now, the first time you came into contact with this pivot zone was after the halving in 2016, and it was support. Bull market continues, right? The only thing that, I'm putting in caution is in 2021, I put out some zones that people, because everybody's looking for 100K. And I said, I think the top is here. And it was between like 60 and 70,000. It was underneath trend-based zones, which is in here, this chart. Okay, so this was my chart from 2021. And what I've done is I've done the exact same thing from 2021 expansions, like how I'm going to get this zone using fibs. Need to be in log for it. And I'm going to use that for the current cycle. And we've actually been butting up against this zone. We've covered it before on your channel. I said people are going to give me shit because 101,000 to 124,000 is a big zone. But, lest they recall, this was 19.5% back in 2021. And people said that, there's no way that's the top. And it ended up being that way, even though it revisited it even. So we've reached it at a time inflection point for me, kind of like we did before. We actually front ran it a little bit right here. But this is an area on the chart where we'd expect a major correction. And you could be seeing that start to play out. And that if Bitcoin can't recover, we need to figure out what it needs to recover price-wise for this to have an immediate continuation. Then we have to look at things as maybe a larger correction will play out. And maybe this will go lower than expected. And if it does, what are those targets and what's the timeline of that? So the simple question, I know you're going to ask it, is, do I think the bull market's over or not? And it's a yes or no question.
Magic? Come on, man.
There's no way. People have been asking me since like the beginning of the year when we started correcting.
Just kidding. I definitely wasn't going to ask you that for sure.
I know. I get family members that ask me all the time, things like that. I mean, it happens. So my opinion is it's a very easy question to answer because there's only a yes or a no answer. Or I guess you could say, I don't know. But and that's the correct answer is I don't know. But my opinion on it is if this is the zone that I've plotted out for myself and said that this is going to be the high, I am basically saying that I think that the top is more or less in. Maybe it makes a little bit higher. It could go as high as 124K from the 110K top. But I would say that this is probably the area where I'm going to be very risk adverse and potentially looking for hedge depending on timing. You had a really nice trade setup here to the downside even. So it was one of those where it could be the top. I would lean towards closer to 50-50. And I did that at 73K with you guys. Obviously, we made new highs after like 6 months, but this was a big area for me. And this is another really big zone. We've talked about it before that I think that this is potentially an area that would catch people off guard. Now, a traditional cycle will run till October. And that's not cooked by any means yet because we have our pivot zone. I'm going to use the word pivot zone so we don't have to hear me say PP over and over. But that pivot zone that we just talked about right here, since we're above it, I technically can't say that by my own methods that the high is in yet. Even back here, this is where I got my hedge to go short in 2022. If you guys remember, I was short from about, 40 some K, right? So looking at this zone here, we're above it for now. So bull market still has a chance to me, but we need to do some recovery in terms of levels. And the levels you really need to recover are quite simple. You can do anything you want in terms of either market structure or horizontal levels. You guys know I like horizontal levels because they're just really easy. And I like it when they don't deviate. So if this is my holding zone, I've been doing things with this show even where I give levels that last an entire year that are based off of specific sessions, and those deviations. And so for me, I would say that a really good indicator would be 99K. But I think that's a little broad because these are so far apart. I think that you could go in and probably cut them in half. And I would say that the very first sign of strength is going to be back above 92,165. That is a deviation. It's the plus 3.5, just adding that 50% marker in there. If we can get back above that, we have a shot at challenging, this like 99K area, which to me is a very important region. And it may even come down to somewhere like 96 or 97, but 92 is the first place. If you don't recover 92, it's more than likely going to travel to this like 84 low and then into that like $80,000 zone. Knife catching to me is just not something I've ever done. And people don't like to hear that. And the only other thing I'll add in before I turn it over, because I know I'm just rambling off a bunch of things at people. But we cover these things pretty routinely on this show. And the reason I do is because they're the most influential things to me as a trader and analyst that determine my bias and my opinions and my positioning. Is been this weekly RSI. I've been talking about it. I actually put it on Twitter at one point, like coming into the new year. I said, you guys want to see a dead body? And the reason I said that is because the weekly RSI is not in a good position. You can see historically that you see massive divergences at the levels for pretty influential highs. Like this one right here is a very big one because that's the COVID crash. This is the prior all-time high, and this is our current situation. So, weekly divergence, definitely not good. And you can see 46 being the key level here that it's bouncing on. And below that is definitely no bueno. So maybe we see a very harsh reset like we did in 2021. I kind of alluded to that earlier, that maybe price can go lower than we're expecting and continue to be in a bull market. It just violates one of the ways I see the market with that pivot zone. Whereas back here, it did not, because that pivot zone was all the way down in like the 20,000 rate region. It didn't even reach it on this 50% drop because price had expanded so quickly. So a very severe cooling off period could come into play, and maybe we see that secondary rally. Whereas you get divergence like this, that would be kind of what you're looking at in this instance. But it would just mean that the next rally was for selling, is all it would mean. But not to be doom and gloom on anyone. Again, we're above some key levels. I think these are the most opportunistic levels that if we are going to see a bottom, they're incoming. The question is, if you position yourself, can you make yourself sell that position if it doesn't pan out? That's where most people get stuck. As they buy it and they're like, nope, bull market's still on. I've only conceded that there can only be one way that this car goes. It only goes forward. It can't go in reverse. I will only make left turns. That's it. That's where you get in trouble, because the moment you need to make that right turn and sell because it's a lower high or whatever it may be, like back here at 48, 49K, people end up, really betting the farm that they're correct and thinking that they're going to be smarter than the market. And realistically, nobody is. So yeah, that's it. The spiel is over for Bitcoin. Sorry for the winded response, but wanted to really put things in perspective so that people can see why we've come to the conclusion of expecting these levels and why they're so important, is the most important thing, because, you're confirming divergence already. You need to see a reset here, and you need to see price recover some areas, like this right here on a weekly high basis. You can see these candles, that's $96,000. We've talked about 92 being the very first, point of strength, which, on a weekly closing, if you look, we've not closed a weekly candle below, this line here. You could probably even move it up to closer to that 92. So that 90 to 92 region is really the most important area for this week. If that gets recovered, we could see a rally, and we can judge that rally from there. And maybe the bull market continues. But this is the value area I've been talking about, though, that if there's going to be value to be had in the near future to buy some Bitcoin cheap, this is it. So we'll see what we get. I don't know what people are going to do. I don't know what the big players that move this market are going to do. I don't have a crystal ball.
That's the one. And that's the one thing I will say, Magic, is, and I know a lot of traders, right, that do it for a living. They don't look at the news. They strictly look at, price action and charts. But me, obviously, because we have a show, we cover the news. I look at it from this perspective, right? I look at it as you have a commodity with a finite supply. And so if you get, let's just say, the whole talks of a strategic reserve, whether it's for the US, maybe Russia, maybe China, who knows, if one of those countries starts buying, it becomes a factor of just supply and demand, right? It's not like a company wants to raise more money, or they have a big announcement and the stock price goes up and they can just do a stock split and issue more stock, right? And it essentially dilutes the price per share, but it keeps the market cap at the same price. You can't really do that with Bitcoin. And so, and the other thing I was looking at was miner capitulation, and miners, and maybe that chart's changed since yesterday, but miners aren't really capitulating. And typically they do that in at the tippy top of bull markets, or if we're actually in a bear market. So I think what's confusing a lot of people is people know there's 30% pullbacks in markets and they expect it, right? Other people are looking at it like this is not a cycle we're used to seeing. This should have happened and that should have happened. But this cycle truly has been different, right? We hit our all-time high prior to the halving. And so are we accelerated 9 months or 7 months to previous all-time highs based on when the halving happened and when the all-time high happened? Potentially. But no one can sit here and say, I know exactly what's going to happen. Go ahead.
I really do equate that to the election here, because there was so much uncertainty surrounding the election going into it, and now afterwards because of policy decisions, that I think that's why you saw an accelerated market, is that people knew if they were going to be risk on, now's the time, because nothing's going to change until after said date. And then once he gets in there, call it the Trump pump, the Trump effect. But, as he's doing sweeping, policies, tariffs, things like that, you have consumers that are really struggling to make, day-to-day payments on things. It's not a great recipe when there's that much uncertainty. So I think that's why you've seen price action the way you have in terms of like how fast it's happened, because it surprised me as well, going through like 49K at the gold pocket before the halving and making a new all-time high pre-halving is not something we've done. So I'm a long-term big believer in Bitcoin. You were talking about being a commodity. I think it is a very, very good asset. I'm a huge fan of Bitcoin in terms of like what it stands for and things like that. But in terms of like, the chart, things go up and down. But realistically, we're over here talking about this like it's the end of the world. And if we zoom out on Bitcoin, the BLX, this is its entire history. There's been some nasty downside, but that's a really great looking chart. It's hard to, it's hard to not want to own that long term still. I would just rather buy it at value areas than not, because I do want to own more of it. I want to own as much of it as I can until the chart tells me not to.
Yeah. One thing about I respect about you, Magic, is you don't really give a shit what people say. You express your opinion. That's why we keep bringing you on the show. It's good to get outside perspective, whether you agree with someone or not. And so we always appreciate you, Magic. We got Magic's Discord put in the top here. If you want to go yell at him because he said some stuff you didn't like, feel free to hop in his Discord. And I don't know how maybe he'll kick you out. Maybe he won't. Who knows? But there's a lot of good stuff in there. And so, Magic, we appreciate your insight. Thank you so much for joining us. And we'll see you next week, man.
See you guys. Thank you.
Take care, brother.
All right.
What's your opinion, Rob?
On the direction of the markets? And
yeah. So Magic, what he was pretty much saying was, based on the levels he got plotted out, he thinks the top is more than likely in. You've said we can get a triple top, which means we can hit that 110 to 120, maybe a couple more times.
Here's the thing. If we find ourselves in a situation where we don't get the Bitcoin strategic reserve for the US, then, from a chart perspective, then, I mean, it would make sense, right? What he's saying, we lost some key levels. We've had some big pullbacks, and the timing of the current cycle should say we shouldn't be here at this zone, right? Or at least we shouldn't trade here for any significant amount of time. Pullbacks are common in the bull market, and so to say, hey, the price of Bitcoin will be $101,000 or $105,000 or $8,000, and then we'll be back down to 80, the low 80s or high 80s or low 90s. I don't think if you were to say this in hindsight, I think it wouldn't spook you, right? You'd be like, okay, no, that's typical. However, if we do go up, put in a new all-time high at 108, and we're just hanging out for long periods of time at a lower price point, it does kind of buck what we've typically seen. But let me remind you that last bull market, we did see a big, almost a 50% correction. Bitcoin was at $64,000 in 2021, and then it pulled back to $30,000, and everyone had assumed the bull market was over. And then we had it was like 4 or 5 months of kind of consolidation, a little bit of rally, another pullback. And so, just take this piece of advice, is that we love to look at cycle data and look at history, but Bitcoin is a very, very new asset class. And every time there's a new cycle, a lot has changed in Bitcoin. And we're not talking about a stock where a company has, essentially, is just operating as normal. We're talking about Bitcoin, which is becoming a full-fledged commodity that's a hedge against inflation, that is getting more and more adoption. And so when you see stock prices drop, as an example, it usually has something to do with the underlying company. And so if all of a sudden you own Blockbuster stock and Blockbuster is selling off, it's probably a good reason that you had an all-time high for Blockbuster and then all of a sudden it's down 90%, right? With Bitcoin, a commodity, that's not the case. And if anything, the opposite is happening. And even if you compare it to other commodities, it's not like more and more people are believing in gold, right? And so when you look at gold, if all of a sudden you took a room of 10 people and you said, hey, over the next course of 5 years, 3 of these people are going to start buying gold, and you just keep extrapolating that out and you get 30% of the population keeps adopting gold every 4 years, then you know that the price of gold is just going to exponentially keep going up. The same for Bitcoin here. And so for me, I can't subscribe to the idea that the bull market is over right now. I just can't. The price currently is just simply that. It's a pullback. And also, we have the U.S., the United States of America, is about to launch a strategic reserve where they're going to buy 1 million Bitcoin over the course of 5 years. And so for me, I just don't see a scenario where that happens and we're in a bear market. Because if the U.S. is buying Bitcoin, we know that other nations are doing as well. And so I'm not worried about it. My only kind of question here is, how long is this pullback? How far down does it go? Is this thing going to go for 3, 4, 5 months? I still think that 2026, we're still going to see a over 6-figure Bitcoin. I think that this happens, historically, if you do want to look at the charts, in the winter time, October, November, December is when we're supposed to theoretically be in the top of the market. But I do think that we're going to get some highs before then, some new all-time highs before then. And I think that we'll get some pullbacks before then. And also, this will continue out to 2026. So I would encourage you guys not to panic. If you see a $40,000 Bitcoin, different story. You see a $60,000 Bitcoin. I will say the one concern I have, though, is that, it has been a long time since we've been under. It's been a long time since we've been under 86,000. And so there was really no stop here. And so if you look at this chart here, and we can pull it up here in TradingView if you want, and it's a little bit more apparent or easier to read. But we essentially went from 69,000, 70,000 straight up to 85, 90,000. And so there was really no stops in between 70 and 90,000. And so if you lose this 85, the charts kind of tell you that there's not a lot of support there. And so could we drop down to 70,000? I mean, we moved up from 70 to 90 pretty quickly. We can also move down as well. And even if that happened, it would not invalidate the market. I just think that it's going to be just a big pullback. And, and what I was telling you earlier, if you want to take a peek here, take a look at what we saw as far as pullback in 2021. This here, I don't think this is what we've seen. I genuinely don't, but I just want you to understand that these pullbacks do not invalidate. And so we had went from 63,000 down to 31. And so we had a 50% pullback in the middle of a bull market, which then rallied again and put in another new all-time high afterwards. So the markets will not do what you think they will. I'll say this one last part. I think that when it comes to the sentiment of the market in the short term, the population, the masses, what everyone's saying, the percentages, the consensus, if it's going to keep rallying, if all of a sudden everyone's euphoric, you're probably going to get a pullback. Same thing if you're too bearish, right? If everyone's like, oh my God, it's over, Bitcoin's going to crash. If that's the narrative, usually it switches. However, in the macro, usually the population is correct. Hey, Bitcoin's gonna keep doubling. It's gonna, post-halving, it's gonna make new all-time highs. It's gonna keep growing year over year on an annualized basis. Same thing for like the S&P 500, right? You say, hey, look, you know what? in the macro sense, you're probably gonna get returns somewhere around 8% holding the S&P 500. You're probably gonna get somewhere around 30% annualized return on Bitcoin every year. Those tend to keep happening, right? Those aren't really invalidated when on a macro sense. So in the short term, don't listen to the people. In the long term, listen to the people.
For me, it would be really small-minded to completely dismiss the idea of, is the top in? Do I think the top is in? No. And here's the thing too. There is a lot of fuckery going on in crypto. Let me just show you something, okay? And I'm not accusing anyone of anything. Not saying Bybit's manipulating the market. It's just the information is interesting. It's very interesting. Bybit borrowed 130,000 ETH 3 days ago, 2 or 3 days ago, to cover up the hole, right? Because it was customer funds that was hacked. And this was posted today. Bybit has returned 100,000 ETH to partners who supported the exchange during the hack, with around 33,000 left. Okay. And then you take a look at this. Bybit started repaying borrowed ETH from institutions after 571 million in longs were liquidated on their exchange in the past 24 hours. Now, I ain't no detective. I'm not. Some things may be coincidence. Other things, there may be some behind it. But you borrow that amount of Ethereum, the markets get liquidated by almost the exact amount that you borrowed, and then you start paying it back. I don't know. All I'm saying is be careful. These exchanges know your liquidation prices. These exchanges have tons of money that people are trading with, and all it takes is a wick down from the market makers or the people that help with the pricing, right? Just a wick down to that liquidation level, and you got 300 million, 500 million, $1 billion cleared from the markets. There's a lot of this going on in the crypto markets. If this was and to sit here and say there's no manipulation happening, I know it happens in every market, but it's especially kind of messed up in crypto, right? With what the market makers are doing. I'm actually working on trying to bring someone from that world onto the show to kind of explain how this thing works on the back end. But I don't know. I cannot subscribe to the idea that one of the 5 largest economies in the entire world, if they start buying Bitcoin, that the bull market is over. I just can't do that. So unless you don't think the strategic reserve and the 10 people that Donald Trump has appointed to his cabinet, who all either are pro-Bitcoin or are holding Bitcoin, or in some cases, a majority of their wealth is in Bitcoin, that they're not going to follow through on the promise of a Bitcoin strategic reserve and start buying Bitcoin. I just can't. I understand some people only look at the charts. It's not a shot at anyone, a trader, nothing. But I like to take a more dual approach to it. What is happening on the fundamental side? What is happening on the narrative side? And then, of course, what is happening with price action and prices? And so that's kind of where I'm at.
All right. So let's just stop beating this horse, okay? Bull market's not over, right?
I just said no.
Yeah. I said the same thing. Let's leave it there. Okay. So we've all identified bull market's not over. Let's not spend another 20 minutes talking about it. Let's talk about what we're buying, right? Because everything's on discount,
I'm not
right?
buying anything. I'm broke.
You're broke? Okay. Well, if you have money, unlike David, you know what? There's a lot of things on discount, a lot of things that pull back, and it's great time to start identifying value here. And so if you look at what's down the most right now, going down the list, what has taken the biggest hit has been Ethereum and Ethereum's ecosystem. You got AAVE here, also ETH name service. But if you go down the list, you have ETH right now is, I'm in question, like, how far down will ETH tumble? And, if it were to theoretically lose that $2,000 mark, I know that, I think if you see a low $80,000 Bitcoin, I think we see a $1,800 Ethereum. Now, that also would entail Bitcoin dropping, another 10%, right? Going from 89,000 down to 81. But I think if we saw that move, I think that you would see Ethereum also take some more punches. Now, I'm about as bearish on Ethereum as it comes. But, however, from a value proposition, I think that if $1,800 Ethereum, if that thing were to drop down there, is massively undervalued. And that just comes from a perspective like, I don't think Ethereum is going to hit $10,000 this year. However, I do think it's going to hit 6, 7, 8,000. I do think that it's going to have its time in the market. I just don't feel quite as confident in holding Ethereum versus Bitcoin. With that said, if it sells off dramatically more than Bitcoin does, and it gets to under $2,000, even the biggest bear of ETH out here, I might have to pick some up, man. And so that's something I'm keeping an eye on, man.
So excited for that 3x, man.
No, I mean 1,800.
So 6,000 is a 3x.
No, I said even on the lower end, I think it's 6,000, right?
You said it's not going to hit 10.
Yeah, I do think that somewhere between 6,000 and 9,000.
3x.
Yeah, so
4x.
yeah, I think that's pretty solid. No, but even then, I'm not gonna liquidate my portfolio to buy it. But I think it might be. I have been wrong about a lot of things, and so having a little bit of a position on ETH. I have very small amount of ETH. It's not any like chunk of my portfolio. I've exited ETH, but I got some there. A lot of it's more gas fees and change laying around, and a couple $100 here, a couple $100 there. But I got no problem getting a little bit of ETH because I might be wrong, and if I'm wrong, I'd rather be wrong and buy it at $1,800 than be wrong and buying it at 4,000 and being like, "See, told you, 2x." Or 3x, whatever it is. Say it gets to $12,000. So yeah, I mean, to go back down in the list of projects that are, on discount right now, you got BitTensor, one of your favorites. That one's at $360. It was around $450 not too long ago. You also have AAVE if you're a fan of DeFi. I mean, this is probably the most safest play in DeFi out there, in my opinion. Hedera also down 9% today. You take a look at the Hedera chart on the 1 year, it's still very healthy. It went from 4 cents and was over 37 cents. And so, I mean, this is something that if you felt like you missed out on this rally and you were like, man, I could have picked it up at 5 cents. If you believe in the project, you think that it's going to continue, it's going to get back up to that 30 cents and keep continuing on. I think 19 might be a good entry spot. Is there any altcoins that you think are massively undervalued at this current moment, especially with the pullback? Maybe one that has fallen from grace. I know Solana's down quite heavy. I don't think that Solana's going to have a big bounce back immediately, but I do think that they'll have a big bounce back this year. And so maybe at $140. I saw it yesterday at 136, and that was a steal, man. I think the markets did overreact on the meme coin situation. The meme coins really cooling off. And so if you're a fan of Solana, if you have a position on Solana, or maybe you bought Solana around $200, might be a good opportunity to lower your average buy and pick up some Solana, right? So anything catch your eye?
I look at two projects that have really just ran. One of them is Mantra, right? Take a look at the Mantra chart. This is on the month. So this thing has ran from $1.30 just 3 months ago to a high of $9.21. Seeing a nice little pullback. Project like Sonic, okay? Which, by the way, I recently downloaded started kind of dipping into that ecosystem. And I'm going to pull up the Phantom chart because there's more data here. For the Phantom chart, let's go to the quarterly here. So for Sonic/Phantom, I mean, I don't know if we're going to get there, but that 56-cent level on the high time frame looks really good. But this is another project that was just absolutely crushing it and is now coming into, and you can see here, it's coming into some support at that, or did wick down there at that 56-cent level. But Sonic is another one. So even if you miss a narrative and you can identify that, okay, this narrative is running hot, damn it, I missed out. These are the pullbacks. So if you believe Mantra is going to continue to take market share in RWA, buy the dip. If you believe Sonic will be a top 3 player in DeFi, and it ran all the way up to almost pretty much $1, and you're sitting at 75 cents, that's a 25% discount. And if you believe that narrative is still going to continue, it's a great place to pick up some more Sonic. And so these are great times to just go through your portfolio and figure out what narratives you still believe in, what narratives you believe are going to continue, and what new narratives are going to come about. And you search for the top ones that are building, and it's not very hard. You look at something like Avalanche, right? You still believe in gaming, you still believe in RWA. You're looking at Avalanche from a month ago is down almost 50%. So Avalanche, and the other one I really, really have my eye on that I think is super undervalued right now is Cardano. Did a Cardano video today, and I kind of answered the question of, are we going to see 30 cents or $3 first? So I answered that question in Cardano, but this massive move from that 32-cent level to around $1.30, we're at that golden ratio, right? We're at that 618 level when you throw the fibs on there. And so historically, this has been a great place to enter into a position on Cardano, or potentially maybe a long, or even add to your bag. You see here back on the 9th of this month, Cardano spilled off into that 618 level, and then it had a nice bounce back. Right? Bounce back from around 67 cents, where we are, to 83 cents. So that's an easy, what is that, a 40% scalp? Or essentially baking in 40% profit if you buy it now. So those are kind of the ones I'm looking at. Now, one thing I would say, now is not the time to add to super speculative like meme coins and, oh, well, they're going to do this. Find projects that are building, that have been building, that have a clear roadmap and utility, and buy those ones at discount because you're going to get the most value from those ones. Speaking of getting value, here is this piece of news. So Ryan Cohen, the CEO of GameStop, has said in a letter received that he urges GameStop to convert its $5 billion cash into BTC. So this is kind of what I was saying, is you have all this stuff happening behind the scenes, just the buying hasn't started yet. So when that buying starts, it's a simple matter of supply and demand. And then you have this piece of news as well. The SEC has officially dismissed their investigation into Uniswap. And so just a kind of a recap. Also, they dismissed the Robinhood, the OpenSea, and the Coinbase. And then a little odd news yesterday. This was Sam Bankman-Fried came back to life. Looks like they, along with his daily cucumber, they also gave him a laptop because he put out a post for the first time on X. I'm not going to read through this, but he's talking about having sympathy for the government employees that are getting laid off. And I thought this was hilarious. Sold down so bad, they literally called in Sam Bankman-Fried. And yeah, so
and then did you see? Not only is
also wait, one more thing.
Go ahead.
You know how Elon Musk sent out an email, tell us what you did, 5 things you did. RFK also sent out an email. Email me 5 things you ate last week. Anyway.
MicroStrategy has taken a punch in the gut. If you look just on the 1 day, you have MicroStrategy dropping from $265 down to $240 at one point. It's a little bit of a bounce back there. Look at the 5 day. Just a week ago, you had MicroStrategy, or now called Strategy, at $335 down to $255. It lost $100 in its share price, which is around about 30%, 30-40%. So big move down there. And if you look at the 1 year chart, at one point, MicroStrategy was almost at $500. It was at $470. And so we've seen about a 50% pullback from its all-time high. Not surprised to see MicroStrategy selling off when Bitcoin does. That's to be expected. However, it is some big swings, man. And, is this a good opportunity to enter into MicroStrategy as a stock? I would say, yeah, right? I mean, We know that MicroStrategy has continuously just performed. I mean, if you look on the 5-year here, I mean, this thing is just keeps going up and up, right? Prior to their buy, they were at $14. Let that sink in. $14 prior to the last run up, and it got up to $100. There were several times to buy at $40 and then $60, and it ran up. And then once Bitcoin crashed, it went back down to $20. It seems very reminiscent here. You know, we had a run up, got to 400, pulled back. So wouldn't be surprised to pick up MicroStrategy here and see it over $1,000 at the height of the market.
I think a better entry on MicroStrategy would be at $180. So this is MSTR on the month, and so you have a very important support level at 180, which is also it's got some confluence with our 618. So it's just, you know, they announced they were buying Bitcoin yesterday, and typically that pushes the price up, but obviously with the current sentiment and everything going on with the Bitcoin's price, it did push the price down. So this is essentially, as Michael Saylor said, this is a levered position on Bitcoin. And so, yeah, I mean, if you're looking for like the absolute best entry, I'd wait for like $180.
Any concerns on MicroStrategy as a company? Peter Schiff was out here spreading his FUD, talking about imminent bankruptcy for Strategy. Obviously, I don't share that same thought.
I voiced my concerns over them holding so much Bitcoin.
The thing is they keep borrowing, right? And so at some point, there is a point where theoretically MicroStrategy would go bankrupt, right? And what is that point? Maybe it's $5,000 Bitcoin. I don't know. I don't know the intricacies of borrowing and their holdings, and that I'm not sure. But I'm just saying that there is some number in Bitcoin's price that if it goes down low enough, there could be some bankruptcy concerns, right? I mean, don't you agree that if Bitcoin were to drop low enough, because they keep borrowing, right? They keep borrowing to buy more Bitcoin. So, what does that doomsday scenario look like? I don't think it's realistic, but I think it's something to think about. But I will say this. If MicroStrategy went under and they were forced to sell all their Bitcoin, bull market is definitely over.
That's not going to happen anytime soon.
But I'm just saying, if that were to happen, if in some scenario that MicroStrategy went under, bull market's over. I mean, I
think before then the bull market will be over because you would start hearing.
Yeah, but you like that would be the confirmation.
At that point, it would be too late. At that point, it's probably time to buy the.
Because then at that point, you would see, like, let's just say Bitcoin at like $8,000, or I don't know, man. Maybe they've leveraged and borrowed so much, and it puts them in a really tight situation. Maybe Bitcoin just has to pull it back to like 30. I don't know, but whatever the scenario is, if Bitcoin, if MicroStrategy or Strategy were to go under, bull market is officially over. But I do not believe that'll happen. But it is in the realm of possibilities. It is a company. Companies do go bankrupt. It is just the reality of life. But I feel extremely confident in MicroStrategy, and they've been in this position before. I remember when there was nonstop memes about and gifs about Michael Saylor working at McDonald's and getting margin called on his loan if Bitcoin hits $12,000 or something of that nature. So I wouldn't put too much into it. I guess it's just a fun thought experiment here, but
I don't know about fun, but it's definitely an experiment of thoughts. I do want to give a big thank you. Today's show is brought to you by Legacy Network and the Legacy Academy app that has been live on Google and Apple Play stores. If you haven't done so, download it. You can earn LGCT tokens while you're learning about multiple things like business, like life, like your relationships, maybe your health. Either way, it is currently free and you can earn money by doing so. And so download the app and drop them a review in the App Store if you do so and you enjoy it. So big shout out to them. That'll do it for the show today. I will be again going live. Now, yesterday is why I tell you guys to have your notification bells on. I went live at 3:15 p.m. Pacific versus 5 p.m. Pacific. Why? The markets were tanking. I want to figure out what the hell is going on. I know a lot of people run to YouTube when stuff like this happens. So have your notification bell on, because if the markets start dumping again or if they start pumping, I will be adjusting my time to go live just to make sure that you guys have all the up-to-date, in-the-know information as it comes. And so join me. As of now, it'll be 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's all I got. Anything else?
That's it.
That's it. Rocco. Rocco, do you think the bull market's over?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Guess we're all in agreement here. All right. That being
No.
said,
It's not over. If you've been holding for a long time, it should be used by now.
yeah, it's like getting calluses on your hands. Anyways, tornado. Cue the music. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We appreciate every single one of you. Everything's going to be okay, my friends. We promise you. Come back tomorrow. Same place, same time. Love you guys. Until then.
Ciao a tutti.
Sin City, crypto. Everybody know we here for entertainment and info. Gonna show you how to get that big dough. So every day stay tapped in for big facts, no capping. With Bitcoin, if you're in, then you win. We divide the pie with no fraction. It's Big Rob, David. I split the game, but they gave it. Named according to your favorite. I got dry powder, why save it? To the OGs, new beginners. Special shout out to the well members. Buy the dip, sell winners. Ain't really nothing you can tell sinners. Tune in for the latest new flavors. They gonna teach us mean coins. They polarizing like barbecue chicken pizzas. I laugh with a major grin. Laggers, we trade them in. Baddies, they came to sin. And sinners gon' play to win. Screaming hola till my bags are flowing over. Hold ya to the moon, then to the solar. Won't I? Don't be letting FOMO control ya. It's over when the finger tornado close ya.